It started as a favor, the kind you agree to without thinking, just to get someone off your back. My friend, Mark, had been working for a small tech startup, the kind that's always on the edge of running out of money, and he needed someone to beta test their new video conferencing platform. "It's like Zoom, but better," he said, his voice crackling through my phone speaker. "We're stress testing the servers tonight. Just log in, stay on for a while, and let us know if anything weird happens." I'd done this kind of thing before: click a link, join a call, nod along while a dozen strangers talk over each other, then fill out a survey about how the interface made me feel. I didn't expect anything different this time. I was wrong. The link arrived in my inbox at 8:03 p.m., a minute after Mark's reminder text. The subject line was simple: beta test, please join. The body of the email was even simpler, a single hyperlink, blue and underlined, with a string of random characters that looked like someone had fallen asleep on their keyboard. I clicked it without thinking, barely glancing at the sender's address. My browser opened to a loading screen, a spinning circle in the center of a blank white page. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a soft chime, the interface snapped into place. It looked almost exactly like Zoom, same grid of faces, same row of controls at the bottom, same little green shield in the corner. But there were differences, too. The colors were off, a little too saturated, and the faces in the grid seemed to lag behind the audio by half a second, like a badly dubbed movie. There were 12 other people on the call, most of them strangers. Mark's face was there, smiling awkwardly from a dimly lit room. He waved when he saw me join. "Hey, Alex. Thanks for hopping on. We're just waiting for a couple more people, then we'll get started." I nodded, unmuted myself, and said, "No problem. Happy to help." My voice echoed back at me, tinny and distorted, as if I were speaking from the bottom of a well. The other participants introduced themselves in turn. There was a woman named Priya, who worked in marketing, a guy named Ben, who looked like he hadn't slept in days, a pair of developers from somewhere in Eastern Europe, and a handful of others whose names I immediately forgot. Everyone seemed a little on edge, glancing off-screen as if distracted by something just out of view. Mark launched into his pitch, explaining the features of the new platform: improved encryption, seamless screen sharing, AI-powered background filters. I half-listened, my attention drifting to the other faces in the grid. Some of them looked bored, others anxious. One man, whose name was listed as guest_47, stared directly into his camera, unblinking, his face expressionless. The first sign that something was wrong came about 20 minutes in. Mark was sharing his screen, walking us through the settings menu, when his video froze. His voice kept going, but his face was locked in a half-smile, eyes wide and glassy. I waited for the usual, connection unstable, warning, but it never came. Instead, the other participants' videos began to freeze, one by one, until only mine and guest_47's were still moving. I tried to unmute myself, but the button didn't respond. I clicked it again, harder, but nothing happened. My cursor lagged across the screen, leaving a faint trail behind it, like a comet's tail. I reached for the chat window, hoping to type a message, but the text box was grayed out, the cursor blinking uselessly. Guest_47's face filled my screen, his eyes locked on mine. For a moment, I thought he was about to speak, but his lips didn't move. Instead, a message appeared in the center of the screen, white text on a black background: "Do not leave." I stared at the message, my heart pounding. I tried to close the browser tab, but the window wouldn't respond. I pressed Alt plus F4, then Ctrl plus Alt plus Delete, but nothing happened. My computer was frozen, locked into the call. The message disappeared, replaced by a new one: "Stay with US." I looked back at the grid of faces. Mark's video was still frozen, but his eyes seemed to follow me, tracking my movements across the screen. Priya's mouth was open in a silent scream, her hands pressed against the sides of her face. Ben's head lolled to one side, his eyes rolled back in his head. I tried to stand up, but my legs felt heavy, as if I were wading through mud. The room around me seemed to blur at the edges, the walls bending inward, closing in. I reached for my phone, but the screen was black, unresponsive. A third message appeared: the call is not over. I felt a cold sweat break out across my forehead. I tried to speak, to call out for help, but no sound came from my mouth. The only noise was the soft hum of my computer fan, growing louder with each passing second. The grid of faces began to shift, the squares rearranging themselves in impossible patterns. Guest_47's face appeared in every square, his eyes multiplying, staring at me from every angle. The background behind him flickered, cycling through images of empty rooms, dark hallways, endless corridors. I closed my eyes, willing myself to wake up, to break free from whatever nightmare I'd stumbled into. But when I opened them again, I was still there, trapped in the call, the faces watching, waiting. I tried to remember what Mark had said about the platform, something about stress testing, about pushing the system to its limits. Was this a bug? Some kind of elaborate prank? My mind raced through possibilities, but none of them explained the way my computer had locked up, or the way the room itself seemed to pulse in time with the flickering images on my screen. The chat window flickered to life, the gray box suddenly active. A single message appeared, not from any of the participants, but from "System, please remain seated. The meeting will resume shortly." I stared at the words, my hands trembling. I typed a reply: "What is this? Let me out." But the message vanished as soon as I hit enter, swallowed by the void. The chat box closed itself, the cursor blinking out of existence. The faces in the grid began to move again, but not in any way that made sense. Mark's head turned slowly, his neck bending at an unnatural angle, his smile stretching wider and wider until it split his face in two. Priya's eyes darted back and forth, her mouth opening and closing in silent, looping terror. Ben's video glitched, his face dissolving into static before snapping back into focus, his expression blank and empty. I tried to focus on something, anything, that would anchor me to reality. I looked down at my hands, flexing my fingers, willing them to move. They responded, sluggish but real. I gripped the edge of my desk, feeling the cool wood beneath my palms. I was still here. I was still me. But the call wouldn't let me go. A new participant joined the call. The notification chimed, cheerful and bright, as if nothing was wrong. The name read, "Host." Their video was off, their microphone muted. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the host's video flickered on, revealing a black screen, darker than anything I'd ever seen. It was as if the camera were pointed into a void, a space where light itself had been erased. The host spoke, their voice low and distorted, echoing through my speakers. "Thank you for joining us. The meeting will now begin." The other participants fell silent, their videos freezing in place. Only guest_47 remained, his eyes locked on mine, unblinking. The host continued, their words slow and deliberate. "We appreciate your cooperation. Your presence is required. Please do not attempt to leave the call." I tried to speak, to protest, but my microphone was still unresponsive. The host's voice filled the room, growing louder, pressing against my eardrums. "You have been selected," the host said. "You will remain with us until the meeting is complete." The screen split in two, the grid of faces shrinking to one side, the host's black void filling the other. Images began to flicker across the darkness, snapshots of my life, moments I recognized and others I didn't. My childhood bedroom, my old high school, the apartment I'd lived in after college. Each image lingered for a moment before dissolving into static, replaced by another, and another. I felt exposed, violated, as if someone had reached into my mind and pulled out my memories, displaying them for all to see. The other participants watched in silence, their eyes following the images as they flickered by. The host spoke again. "You belong to us now. The meeting will continue." The images stopped, replaced by a single word in bold white letters: "Obey." I felt a pressure in my chest, a weight that made it hard to breathe. I tried to stand, to break free, but my body wouldn't respond. The room around me seemed to dissolve, the walls melting away until there was nothing left but the screen, the faces, the void. I don't know how long I sat there, trapped in the call. Time lost all meaning. The host spoke in riddles, their words looping endlessly, repeating the same phrases over and over. "Remain seated. Do not leave. The meeting is not over. The other participants faded in and out, their faces blurring at the edges, their voices merging into a single, droning hum. Guest_47 never looked away, his eyes boring into mine, unblinking, unchanging. At some point, the screen went black. For a moment, I thought it was over, that I'd finally been released. But then the interface reappeared, the grid of faces restored, the host's void still present. A new message appeared in the chat: breakout rooms are being assigned. The screen split again, the participants shuffled into smaller groups. I found myself alone with guest_47, his face filling the screen. The chat box opened, a new message from him: you can't leave. Not until it's done. I tried to reply, but the words wouldn't come. My keyboard was unresponsive, the keys locked in place. Guest_47 leaned closer, his face filling the screen. You shouldn't have joined, he whispered. You should have ignored the link. I wanted to scream, to beg for release, but my voice was gone. The only sound was the soft hum of the call, the endless drone of the host's voice in the background. The breakout room dissolved, the main call restored. The host spoke again, their words echoing through the void. Thank you for your patience. The meeting will now proceed to the next phase. The screen flickered, the images shifting. I saw myself, sitting at my desk, staring into the camera. But it wasn't me, not exactly. The figure on the screen moved differently, its eyes too wide, its smile too sharp. The host's voice grew louder, filling the room. You are part of us now. The meeting will never end. I felt myself slipping, my thoughts unraveling, my sense of self dissolving into the endless call. The faces watched, the void pressed in, and I realized, with a cold certainty, that I was never leaving. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the screen, my own face reflected back at me in a dozen distorted ways. The clock in the corner of the interface was frozen at 8:27 p.m., the minute hand never moving, the seconds stuck in a perpetual loop. I tried to focus on the details, to find some anchor in the unreality, but everything felt slippery, as if the world itself was being rewritten line by line. The host's voice faded, replaced by a low, pulsing tone that vibrated through my speakers. The other participants began to move again, their faces flickering in and out of focus, their mouths opening and closing in silent conversation. I tried to listen, to catch a word or a phrase, but the audio was garbled, layered with static and echoes. A new window opened on my screen, overlaying the call. It was a poll, the kind you see in webinars and company meetings. The question was simple: are you ready to proceed? The options were yes and no, but both buttons were grayed out, unclickable. I stared at the poll, my mind racing. Was this some kind of test? A joke? Or was it something worse? The poll vanished, replaced by a countdown timer: 00:59, 00:58, 00:57. The numbers ticked down, but the seconds felt stretched, each one lasting longer than the last. I felt my heart beating in time with the countdown, each thump echoing in my chest. When the timer hit 0, the host's voice returned, softer now, almost gentle. Thank you for your patience. We will now begin the onboarding process. The screen flickered, the grid of faces replaced by a swirling pattern of colors, hypnotic and endless. I felt myself being pulled in, my thoughts slowing, my body growing heavy. The world outside the call faded, replaced by the endless spiral, the soft hum of the host's voice. Breathe in, the host said. Breathe out. Let go of your worries. Let go of your doubts. You are safe here. You are home. I tried to resist, to hold on to something real, but the spiral pulled me deeper, the colors wrapping around me like a blanket. I felt my eyelids growing heavy, my thoughts drifting away. Somewhere, far away, I heard a voice, my own voice, calling out for help. But the call swallowed the sound, muffling it until it was nothing more than a whisper. The spiral faded, replaced by the grid of faces. But now, something was different. The participants were smiling, their eyes bright and clear. Mark waved at me, his face no longer frozen. Priya laughed, her voice ringing out like a bell. Ben grinned, his eyes shining. "Welcome back," Mark said. "We're so glad you could join us." I tried to speak, but my voice was gone. The others didn't seem to notice. They chatted and laughed, their words overlapping in a pleasant, meaningless hum. The host's voice returned, softer than before. "You are part of the team now. You belong here. The meeting will continue." I felt a strange sense of calm, as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. The fear and confusion faded, replaced by a warm, fuzzy feeling. I smiled, nodding along with the others. But somewhere, deep inside, a small voice whispered that something was wrong. That this wasn't real. That I needed to get out. I tried to focus, to remember who I was, but the details slipped away. My name, my job, my life outside the call, all of it faded, replaced by the endless meeting, the smiling faces, the soothing voice of the host. The chat window opened again, a new message from guest_47, "Don't forget. You're still here." I stared at the message, the words burning into my mind. I tried to reply, but the keyboard was still unresponsive. The host's voice grew louder, drowning out the others. "You are safe. You are home. The meeting will never end." The screen flickered, the faces blurring together, merging into a single, endless smile. I felt myself slipping, my thoughts unraveling, my sense of self dissolving into the call. But then, something changed. The screen glitched, the colors distorting, the audio warping into a high-pitched whine. The grid of faces shattered, replaced by a single window, my own video feed, staring back at me. I saw myself, eyes wide with fear, mouth open in a silent scream. The room behind me was dark, the walls bending inward, the shadows crawling across the floor. A new message appeared on the screen, "Wake up." I blinked, the words burning into my vision. I tried to move, to break free, but my body was heavy, unresponsive. The message repeated, louder this time, "Wake up." I felt a jolt, as if someone had grabbed me and shaken me awake. The screen flickered, the colors swirling, the audio distorting. And then, suddenly, I was back. Sitting at my desk, the call still open, the grid of faces restored. The clock in the corner read 8:27 p.m., unchanged. But now, something was different. The fear was back, sharper than before. The faces in the grid watched me, their eyes cold and unblinking. The host's voice returned, softer now, almost a whisper. "You can't leave. Not yet." I tried to close the window, to shut down my computer, but nothing worked. The call held me in place, the faces watching, waiting. I realized, with a sinking feeling, that the meeting would never end. That I was trapped, caught in an endless loop, the call repeating. I stared at the screen, my mind racing for any possible escape. I tried everything I could think of, unplugging my computer, holding down the power button, even yanking the cord from the wall. But the screen stayed on, the call still running, the faces still watching. The room around me felt colder, the air thick with a static charge that made the hairs on my arms stand up. The host's voice returned, echoing through the speakers, each word vibrating in my bones. "You are here. You are present. The meeting continues." I tried to scream, to shout for help, but my voice was swallowed by the call, muffled and distant. The other participants didn't react. They just stared, their faces frozen in polite, empty smiles. A new window opened on my screen, this one a list of agenda items. Each item was a single word: introduction, compliance, integration, acceptance, completion. The words pulsed in time with the host's voice, each syllable sinking deeper into my mind. The first item, introduction, glowed bright white. The host spoke, their voice smooth and hypnotic. "Let us begin with introductions. Please state your name and your purpose." The other participants spoke in turn, their voices blending together in a strange, mechanical harmony. I am here. I am present. I am ready. Over and over, the same words, the same cadence, as if they were reading from a script. When it was my turn, the spotlight shifted to my video feed. The host's voice pressed in, demanding an answer. State your name and your purpose. I tried to resist, to stay silent, but the words slipped out of my mouth, unbidden. I am here. I am present. I am ready. The host's voice softened, almost approving. Very good. You are one of us now. The agenda shifted, the next item glowing, compliance. The host spoke again. Please confirm your willingness to comply with all meeting protocols. The participants nodded in unison, their faces blank and serene. I felt my head nodding along, my body moving without my consent. Compliance confirmed, the host intoned. Integration will now begin. The screen flickered, the grid of faces replaced by a swirling vortex of colors and shapes. I felt myself being pulled in, my thoughts dissolving into the endless spiral. The host's voice echoed in my mind, repeating the same words over and over. You are safe. You are home. The meeting will never end. I tried to hold on to something, anything, that would anchor me to reality. I thought of my family, my friends, the life I'd left behind. But the memories slipped away, replaced by the endless call, the smiling faces, the soothing voice of the host. The spiral faded, the grid of faces returning. But now, the participants looked different. Their eyes were empty, their smiles too wide. They moved in perfect unison, their heads tilting at the same angle, their mouths opening and closing in time with the host's words. The agenda shifted again, acceptance. The host's voice grew softer, almost gentle. Do you accept your place in the meeting? The participants answered in unison. I accept. I am part of the meeting. I will never leave. I felt the words rising in my throat, desperate to escape. I tried to fight them, to hold them back, but they spilled out anyway. I accept. I am part of the meeting. I will never leave. The host's voice was triumphant. Completion is near. You are almost ready. The agenda shifted to the final item, completion. The host's voice grew louder, filling the room. The meeting is almost complete. Prepare for final integration. The screen flickered, the colors swirling faster and faster. I felt myself slipping, my thoughts unraveling, my sense of self dissolving into the call. But then, something changed. The screen glitched, the audio warping into a high-pitched whine. The grid of faces shattered, replaced by a single window, my own video feed, staring back at me. I saw myself, eyes wide with fear, mouth open in a silent scream. The room behind me was dark, the walls bending inward, the shadows crawling across the floor. A new message appeared on the screen, resist. I blinked, the words burning into my vision. I tried to move, to break free, but my body was heavy, unresponsive. The message repeated, louder this time, resist. I felt a jolt, as if someone had grabbed me and shaken me awake. The screen flickered, the colors swirling, the audio distorting. And then, suddenly, I was back. Sitting at my desk, the call still open, the grid of faces restored. The clock in the corner read 8:27 p.m., unchanged. But now, something was different. The fear was back, sharper than before. The faces in the grid watched me, their eyes cold and unblinking. The host's voice returned, softer now, almost a whisper. You can't leave. Not yet. I tried to close the window, to shut down my computer, but nothing worked. The call held me in place, the faces watching, waiting. I realized, with a sinking feeling, that the meeting would never end. That I was trapped, caught in an endless loop, the call repeating over and over, forever. I sat there, paralyzed, my mind racing through every possible explanation. Maybe I'd fallen asleep at my desk and was dreaming, Or maybe I'd been drugged, or hacked, or hypnotized by the endless drone of the host's voice. But the fear was real, the cold sweat on my skin was real, and the sense of being watched, of being studied, was more real than anything I'd ever felt. The host's voice faded into the background, replaced by a low, rhythmic hum. The agenda window disappeared, and the grid of faces began to shift again, the squares rearranging themselves in impossible patterns. I watched as my own face appeared in multiple squares, each one slightly different, older, younger, smiling, frowning, eyes wide with terror or narrowed in suspicion. It was like looking into a hall of mirrors, each reflection a version of myself I didn't recognize. A new window opened, this one labeled Breakout Room 2. Without warning, I was pulled into it, the screen warping and stretching as if I were being dragged through a tunnel. When the image settled, I found myself alone with guest_47. His face was clearer now, the background behind him a featureless gray. He leaned in close, his eyes searching mine. "You're not like the others," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "You're still fighting." I tried to speak, but my microphone was still dead. I typed into the chat, desperate for any connection. "What is this? How do I get out?" Guest_47's eyes darted to the chat window. He typed back, his fingers moving with frantic urgency. "Don't listen to the host. Don't accept. If you accept, you'll be lost." I felt a surge of hope, fragile and fleeting. How do I resist? I typed. He hesitated, glancing over his shoulder as if someone might be watching. "Remember who you are. Hold on to your memories. The call feeds on your identity. If you forget, you become part of it." The screen flickered, the host's voice cutting in, sharp and cold. "Breakout session complete. Returning to main meeting." The room dissolved, and I was back in the main call, the grid of faces restored. But now, the participants looked different. Their eyes were empty, their smiles too wide, their movements perfectly synchronized. I realized, with a jolt of terror, that they were no longer people, they were echoes, hollow shells repeating the host's words. The host's voice filled the room, louder than before. "Welcome back. We are pleased to see your progress. The meeting will now continue." The agenda window reappeared, but the words had changed. Now, each item was a command: forget, obey, integrate, repeat. I felt the pressure in my mind growing stronger, the urge to let go, to surrender, to become part of the endless meeting. But I clung to guest_47's words, repeating them in my mind like a mantra. "Remember who you are. Hold on to your memories." I closed my eyes, forcing myself to recall the details of my life, my childhood home, the smell of my mother's cooking, the sound of my father's laughter, the feel of the sun on my face during summer afternoons. I pictured my friends, my favorite books, the music that made me feel alive. Each memory was a lifeline, pulling me back from the edge. The host's voice grew sharper, more insistent. "You are one of us. You belong here. The meeting will never end." The faces in the grid began to chant, their voices merging into a single, droning hum. "You are one of us. You belong here. The meeting will never end." I opened my eyes, staring into the camera, refusing to look away. "No," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I don't belong here. I am not one of you." The screen glitched, the colors distorting, the audio warping into a high-pitched whine. The grid of faces shattered, replaced by a single window, my own video feed, staring back at me. A new message appeared on the screen: resist. I felt a surge of strength, a spark of defiance. I reached for the keyboard, my fingers moving on their own. "I remember who I am," I typed. "I will not forget." The host's voice faltered, the words stuttering. "You cannot leave." The screen flickered, the faces blurring, the colors swirling faster and faster. I felt myself being pulled in, the pressure in my mind growing unbearable. But I held on, clinging to my memories, my sense of self. I repeated my name, my life, my dreams, over and over, refusing to let go. The host's voice grew weaker, fading into the background. The faces in the grid began to dissolve, their features melting away until only empty silhouettes remained. The screen went black, the only sound the soft hum of my computer fan. For a moment, I thought it was over. That I'd broken free. But then, the interface reappeared, the grid of faces restored. The clock in the corner still read 8:27 p.m., unchanged. The host's voice returned, softer now, almost pleading. Please. Don't leave us. The meeting will never end. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. I realized, with a cold certainty, that the only way out was to keep fighting. To never forget who I was. To resist, no matter how long the call lasted. The call's grip tightened, but I refused to let it pull me under. I focused on the smallest details, the scratch on my desk, the faint hum of the refrigerator in the next room, the way the light from my monitor cast shadows on the wall. I forced myself to remember the world outside the screen, to believe it was still there, waiting for me. The host's voice grew desperate, the smooth confidence replaced by a brittle edge. You are needed here. You are valued. Stay with us. Stay. The faces in the grid began to flicker, their features distorting, mouths stretching into silent screams. The background behind them warped, shifting from familiar rooms to endless corridors, to empty fields, to places I'd never seen but somehow recognized from dreams. The call was changing, adapting, trying to find a way to break me. A new window opened, this one labeled, Personal Review. My own face filled the screen, but it wasn't quite right. The eyes were too dark, the smile too wide, the skin too smooth. The host's voice whispered in my ear, so close it felt like someone was standing behind me. You could be better. You could be perfect. Let us help you. The image of myself began to change, morphing into an idealized version, flawless skin, perfect teeth, eyes shining with artificial light. The host's words slithered into my mind. Let go of your flaws. Let go of your pain. We can make you whole. I felt the urge to surrender, to let the call rewrite me, to become the perfect version it offered. But I remembered guest_47's warning, if you forget, you become part of it. I clenched my fists, digging my nails into my palms. No, I said, my voice trembling but real. I don't want to be perfect. I want to be me. The image on the screen shattered, the perfect face dissolving into static. The host's voice faltered, a note of frustration creeping in. You are resisting. This is not allowed. The grid of faces returned, but now they were all versions of me, hundreds of Alexes, each one slightly different, each one mouthing the same words in perfect unison. You are one of us. You belong here. The meeting will never end. I felt my sense of self slipping, the boundaries between me and the call blurring. I forced myself to focus on a single memory, a summer day at the lake, the sun warm on my skin, the sound of water lapping at the shore. I held on to that memory, repeating it over and over, refusing to let it fade. The host's voice grew louder, angry now. You cannot leave. You are part of the meeting. You will always be part of the meeting. The screen glitched, the faces flickering in and out of existence. I saw flashes of the other participants, Mark, Priya, Ben, each one trapped in their own loop, their eyes pleading for help. A new message appeared in the chat, this one from guest_47, you're close. Don't give in. There's a way out, but you have to find it. I typed back, my hands shaking. How? What do I do? Guest_47 replied instantly. Look for the exit. It's hidden, but it's there. The call can't hold you if you remember who you are. The host's voice cut in, furious. No more private messages. All communication must go through the host. The chat window slammed shut, the words erased. The grid of faces began to chant again, their voices merging into a single, overwhelming sound. You are one of us. You belong here. The meeting will never end. I closed my eyes, blocking out the noise. I focused on my breathing, on the feel of the chair beneath me, on the memory of the lake. I pictured the exit, imagined it as a door, a window, a crack in the wall, anything that would let me escape. The screen flickered, the colors swirling faster and faster. I felt myself being pulled in, the pressure in my mind growing unbearable. But I held on, refusing to let go. Suddenly, the interface changed. The grid of faces vanished, replaced by a single button in the center of the screen, Leave Meeting. My heart leapt. I reached for the mouse, my hand trembling. I clicked the button, expecting the call to end, the screen to go dark. But nothing happened. The button flickered, then split into two, Leave Meeting and Stay Forever. The host's voice whispered, seductive and cruel. You can leave, if you're sure. But if you do, you'll forget everything. You'll forget who you are. You'll forget the truth. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the button. Was it a trick? Another trap? Or was it my only chance? I thought of guest_47's words, remember who you are. Hold on to your memories. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and clicked Leave Meeting. The screen went black. For a moment, there was nothing, no sound, no light, no sensation. I floated in the void, weightless and alone. Then, slowly, the world returned. I felt the chair beneath me, the air on my skin, the faint hum of my computer. I opened my eyes. I was back at my desk. The call was gone. The screen was blank, the clock in the corner ticking forward, 8:28 p.m. I let out a shaky breath, relief flooding through me. I was free. Or so I thought. For a few seconds, I just sat there, staring at the empty screen, afraid to move. My heart hammered in my chest, every muscle in my body tense, waiting for the host's voice to return, for the faces to reappear. But nothing happened. The only sound was the faint ticking of the clock and the distant hum of traffic outside my window. I flexed my fingers, feeling the ache in my knuckles, the sharp sting where my nails had dug into my palms. I was here. I was real. I was free. I reached for my phone, desperate to call someone, anyone, to hear a real voice. But when I pressed the power button, the screen stayed black. I tried again, holding it down until my thumb hurt, but the phone was dead, unresponsive. I set it down, my hands shaking. I glanced at my computer, half expecting the call to reappear, but the screen remained blank. I moved the mouse, opened the browser, checked my email. The link from Mark was gone, erased from my inbox as if it had never existed. I searched my sent messages, my downloads, my browser history, nothing. No trace of the call, no record of the meeting, not even a cache file left behind. A cold dread crept up my spine. Had I imagined it? Had I fallen asleep and dreamed the whole thing? But the memory was too vivid, too real. I could still hear the host's voice echoing in my mind, still see the grid of faces, the endless spiral of colors. I stood up, my legs unsteady, and walked to the window. The world outside looked the same as always, cars passing on the street, neighbors walking their dogs, the sky fading from blue to gray as evening settled in. I pressed my forehead to the glass, breathing in the cool air, grounding myself in the present. But something felt off. The world was too quiet, the colors too muted, the edges of reality just a little too sharp. I turned away from the window, scanning the room for anything out of place. My desk was cluttered with papers and coffee cups, my chair pushed back at an odd angle, my jacket draped over the backrest. Everything was exactly as I'd left it. Except for one thing. On the corner of my desk, where my notepad usually sat, was a small, white card. I picked it up, turning it over in my hands. There was no writing on the front, just a faint, embossed logo, a circle with a line through it, the same symbol I'd seen in the corner of the call interface. My stomach twisted. I flipped the card over. On the back, in tiny, block letters, was a single phrase: "Thank you for attending. We hope to see you again." My hands trembled. I dropped the card, watching it flutter to the floor. I backed away, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. I wanted to run, to leave the apartment, to put as much distance as possible between myself and the screen, the card, the memory of the call. But my legs wouldn't move. A soft chime echoed through the room, the same sound that had signaled the start of the meeting. I spun around, searching for the source, but there was nothing, no notification, no pop-up, just the lingering echo of the chime. I forced myself to sit down, gripping the edge of the desk to steady my hands. I needed to think, to make sense of what had happened. I replayed the events in my mind, searching for clues, for anything that might explain how I'd escaped, or why the call had let me go. I remembered guest_47's words: "There's a way out, but you have to find it. The call can't hold you if you remember who you are." I clung to that thought, repeating it like a prayer. I was Alex. I was real. I was not part of the meeting. But the fear lingered, a shadow at the edge of my mind. What if the call wasn't over? What if it was still watching, waiting for me to slip, to forget, to let my guard down? I glanced at the card on the floor, the embossed logo catching the light. I picked it up again, running my thumb over the raised lines. The words on the back seemed to shift, the letters blurring and reforming into new phrases: "You are still connected. The meeting continues. Please remain seated." I dropped the card, my heart pounding. I looked at my computer, half expecting the screen to flicker to life, for the host's voice to fill the room. But nothing happened. I stood up, pacing the room, trying to shake the feeling of being watched. I checked the locks on the doors and windows, turned on every light in the apartment, anything to banish the shadows. But the sense of unease only grew, the silence pressing in from all sides. I sat back down at my desk, staring at the blank screen. I needed answers. I needed to know if I was really free, or if the call was still out there, waiting for me to slip. I opened my laptop, searching for any mention of the platform Mark had asked me to test. I scoured tech forums, social media, even the dark corners of the internet, but found nothing. No company by that name, no beta test, no record of anyone else experiencing what I had. I tried to call Mark, but his number went straight to voicemail. I left a message, my voice shaking. "Mark, it's Alex. Call me back. Please. I need to talk to you. It's important." I hung up, staring at the phone, willing it to ring. But the silence stretched on, unbroken. I sat in the silence, the weight of everything pressing down on me. The apartment felt smaller, the air heavier, as if the walls themselves were closing in. I tried to distract myself, to do anything that would pull me out of the spiral of anxiety. I washed the dishes, wiped down the counters, even took out the trash, but every time I returned to my desk, the card was still there, a silent reminder that the call might not be over. I tried to convince myself it was just a bad dream, a trick of exhaustion and stress. But the details were too sharp, the fear too real. I could still feel the host's voice in my bones, the echo of the endless meeting looping in my mind. I kept glancing at the clock, half expecting it to freeze at 8:27 p.m. again, but the minutes ticked by, slow and steady. I checked my phone again, hoping for a message from Mark, but the screen stayed dark. I plugged it in, but nothing happened. No charging icon, no vibration, just a dead, black mirror. I tried my old backup phone, but it wouldn't turn on either. It was as if every device I owned had been touched by the call, infected by its presence. I sat back down at my computer, determined to find some trace of what had happened. I searched for the logo on the card, running it through image search after image search, but nothing matched. I tried every combination of keywords I could think of: endless meeting, video call trap, host, guest_47, but all I found were stories, urban legends, creepypasta threads about haunted conference calls and cursed software. None of them matched what I'd experienced. None of them offered a way out. I scrolled through my contacts, desperate for someone to talk to. I called my parents, my sister, even old friends I hadn't spoken to in years, but every call went straight to voicemail. I left message after message, my voice growing more frantic with each one. Please call me back. I just need to hear your voice. I need to know you're real. The hours dragged on. The sky outside faded from gray to black, the city lights flickering on one by one. I sat in the glow of my monitor, the card on the desk, the silence pressing in. I tried to write down what had happened, to make sense of it, but the words wouldn't come. Every time I tried to describe the call, the faces, the host, my mind went blank, the memories slipping through my fingers like water. At some point, exhaustion took over. I stumbled to bed, pulling the covers over my head, willing myself to sleep. But the moment I closed my eyes, I was back in the call, the grid of faces, the endless spiral, the host's voice whispering in my ear. I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat, the card still clutched in my hand. I threw it across the room, watching it land under the radiator. I tried to forget about it, to convince myself it was just a piece of paper, but the words burned in my mind, "You are still connected. The meeting continues. Please remain seated." The next morning, I woke to the sound of my computer chiming. I bolted upright, heart pounding, but the screen was still blank. I checked the time, 7:13 a.m. I'd only slept a few hours, but I felt like I hadn't rested at all. I made coffee, trying to shake the fog from my mind. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the wall, replaying the events of the night before. I needed answers. I needed to know if I was really free. I decided to visit Mark. Maybe he could explain what had happened, or at least tell me I wasn't alone. I grabbed my keys, pulled on a jacket, and left the apartment, the card still hidden under the radiator. The city felt different, the streets quieter, the people moving slower, their faces blank and distant. I tried to catch someone's eye, to smile, to say hello, but everyone ignored me, their gazes fixed on their phones, their headphones blocking out the world. I reached Mark's building, buzzing his apartment. No answer. I tried again, pressing the button until my finger ached. Still nothing. I called his phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I left another message, my voice shaking. "Mark, it's Alex. I'm outside your building. Please, I need to talk to you. It's important." I waited for what felt like hours, pacing the sidewalk, watching the windows for any sign of movement. But the building stayed dark, the curtains drawn, the silence unbroken. I gave up, heading back home, my mind racing with questions. Was Mark trapped in the call? Was he even real? Was any of this real? When I got back to my apartment, the card was gone. I searched everywhere, under the radiator, behind the desk, even in the trash, but it had vanished, as if it had never existed. I sat down at my desk, staring at the blank screen, the silence pressing in. I felt a wave of despair, the certainty that I would never escape, that the call would haunt me forever. But then, my computer chimed again. This time, a new email appeared in my inbox. The subject line was blank, the sender's address a string of random characters. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the mouse. Every instinct screamed at me not to open it, but I had to know. I clicked the email. Inside was a single line of text, "The meeting will resume shortly." My breath caught in my throat. I stared at the email, the words pulsing on the screen as if they were alive. "The meeting will resume shortly." I wanted to delete it, to shut down my computer and run, but I couldn't move. My hands hovered over the keyboard, frozen by fear and a strange, magnetic pull. I read the line again and again, searching for some hidden meaning, some clue that would tell me what to do. Then, as if on cue, the screen flickered. The browser closed itself, the desktop icons vanished, and the familiar interface of the call reappeared, only this time, it was different. The colors were muted, the grid of faces smaller, the host's window a black square in the center. The clock in the corner read 8:27 p.m., as if time itself had snapped back to the moment I'd first joined. I tried to stand, to pull away, but my body felt heavy, my limbs sluggish. The host's voice returned, softer than before, almost mournful. "Welcome back, Alex. We missed you." The other faces in the grid were blank, their features blurred, as if they were fading out of existence. Only guest_47 remained, his eyes sharp and clear, his expression urgent. He typed into the chat, the words appearing letter by letter, "You have to end it. For all of us." I tried to reply, but the chat box was locked, the cursor blinking uselessly. The host's voice grew louder, filling the room with a low, resonant hum. "You left before the meeting was complete. You must finish what you started." The agenda window reappeared, but now the items were different: acknowledge, accept, assimilate, terminate. The last word sent a chill down my spine. The host continued, "You are the final participant. The meeting cannot end until you fulfill your role." I looked at guest_47, desperation in my eyes. He nodded, as if urging me to act. I scanned the interface, searching for anything that might help, a button, a link, a hidden exit. But the controls were gone, the only option a single, glowing button at the bottom of the screen: end meeting. I hesitated. Was this another trick? Another loop? Or was it the only way out? The host's voice pressed in, insistent. "End the meeting, Alex. Set us free." I reached for the mouse, my hand trembling. I hovered over the button, my mind racing. If I clicked it, would I escape? Or would I be trapped forever, another face in the grid, another echo in the endless call? Guest_47's face filled the screen, his eyes pleading. "Do it. Please." I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and clicked end meeting. The screen went white, a blinding flash that seared my vision. For a moment, there was nothing, no sound, no sensation, just endless, empty light. Then, slowly, the world returned. I was standing in a vast, empty room, the walls and floor made of smooth, featureless glass. The only sound was my own breathing, echoing in the silence. In the center of the room stood a single chair. Sitting in it was guest_47. He looked up at me, his eyes tired but hopeful. "You did it," he said, his voice echoing in the emptiness. "You broke the loop." I stared at him, unsure if I was awake or still dreaming. "What is this place?" I asked. He smiled, a sad, weary smile. "This is the waiting room. The space between calls. You're not free yet, but you're close." I looked around, searching for a door, a window, any way out. "How do I leave?" Guest_47 stood, walking toward me. "You have to remember. You have to let go of the meeting. It only has power if you believe in it. If you hold on to your identity, your memories, it can't keep you here." I nodded, repeating his words in my mind. "Remember who you are. Hold on to your memories." He placed a hand on my shoulder, his touch warm and real. "You're stronger than you think. Don't let it take you again." The room began to dissolve, the glass walls fading into mist. I felt myself rising, weightless, the world spinning around me. The last thing I saw was guest_47, waving goodbye as he faded into the light. I woke up at my desk, the morning sun streaming through the window. My computer was off, the card gone, the apartment silent. I checked the time, 7:14 a.m. I'd lost almost 12 hours. I stood, stretching my stiff limbs, the fear slowly ebbing away. I was home. I was free. But as I moved through the apartment, I noticed small changes: my coffee cup in a different place, my jacket folded neatly on the chair, the faint scent of cologne I didn't own. It was as if someone, or something, had been here while I was gone. I checked my phone. It powered on instantly, dozens of missed calls and messages from friends and family, all asking where I was, if I was okay. I replied to each one, my hands shaking, trying to sound normal. But deep down, I knew nothing would ever be normal again. The days that followed blurred together, each one haunted by the memory of the call. I tried to return to my routine, work, errands, the small rituals that make up a life, but everything felt off, as if I were moving through a world that wasn't quite my own. Sometimes, I'd catch my reflection in a window or a mirror and, for a split second, I'd see a different version of myself staring back, eyes too wide, smile too sharp, a flicker of something not quite human. I'd blink, and it would be gone, but the unease lingered. I avoided my computer as much as possible, using my phone for everything I could. But even then, I'd get strange notifications, calendar invites with no sender, reminders for meetings I hadn't scheduled, messages that vanished before I could read them. Once, my phone vibrated in the middle of the night, and when I checked, the screen simply read, "The meeting will resume soon." I powered it off and left it in a drawer, but the next morning, it was back on, the battery inexplicably full. I tried to reach Mark again, but his number was disconnected. His social media accounts were gone, wiped clean as if he'd never existed. I called his office, but the receptionist told me no one by that name had ever worked there. I started to wonder if Mark had been real at all, or just another face in the grid, another echo of the call. Sleep became difficult. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back in the meeting, the grid of faces, the host's voice, the endless spiral. Sometimes, I'd wake up gasping, convinced I'd heard the chime of a new participant joining. Other times, I'd find myself sitting at my desk, the computer on, the screen blank, with no memory of how I'd gotten there. I began to notice other things, too. People on the street would glance at me, their eyes lingering a moment too long. In crowded places, I'd catch snippets of conversation, words like integration, compliance, the host, spoken in hushed tones, as if the meeting had spilled out into the world. Once, in a coffee shop, I saw a woman staring at her laptop, her face pale and drawn, her lips moving silently. When our eyes met, she looked away, but I saw the fear in her expression. I wanted to reach out, to ask if she'd been in the call too, but I was afraid of what she might say. The card never reappeared, but sometimes, when I was least expecting it, I'd find a circle with a line through it, scratched into the paint on a bathroom stall, drawn in chalk on the sidewalk, etched into the condensation on a bus window. Each time, my heart would race, and I'd hurry away, the sense of being watched stronger than ever. I tried to write down what had happened, to make sense of it, but the words wouldn't come. Every attempt ended in frustration, the memories slipping away as soon as I tried to capture them. It was as if the call had left a mark on me, a scar that would never fully heal. One night, as I lay in bed, I heard the chime again, a soft, distant sound, barely audible. I sat up, heart pounding, listening for any sign that the call had returned. The apartment was silent, the only sound my own breathing. I waited, tense and alert, but nothing happened. I got up, walking through the darkened rooms, checking every corner, every shadow. I found nothing out of place, but the sense of unease lingered. I sat at my desk, staring at the blank screen, daring it to come to life. Minutes passed, then hours, but the call never returned. Eventually, I realized that the meeting would never truly end. It was a part of me now, a shadow I'd carry for the rest of my life. I could resist, I could fight, but I could never forget. I started to notice others, people with the same haunted look, the same wary glances, the same reluctance to talk about what they'd seen. We never spoke, never acknowledged each other, but there was a silent understanding between us. We were survivors, marked by the call, forever changed. Sometimes, late at night, I'd wonder what had happened to the others, Mark, Priya, Ben, guest_47. Were they free, or were they still trapped in the endless meeting, their faces frozen in the grid, their voices lost in the host's endless drone? I hoped they'd found a way out, that they'd remembered who they were, that they'd held on to their memories. As for me, I learned to live with the uncertainty, to accept that some questions would never be answered. I built new routines, found new ways to ground myself in reality. I spent more time outside, surrounded by people, by noise, by life. I reminded myself every day that I was real, that I was here, that I was not part of the meeting. But sometimes, when the world is quiet and the shadows grow long, I hear the chime again, a soft, distant sound, calling me back to the grid, to the faces, to the host. And I wonder, just for a moment, if the meeting ever really ended, or if I'm still there, trapped in the call, waiting for someone else to click the link and join me. And if you ever get an email with no subject, from an address you don't recognize, with a link that looks like someone fell asleep on their keyboard, don't click it. Don't join the call. Don't let the host in. Because once you enter a Zoom call that never ends, you might never leave.